All right, welcome CS13 to responsive web design. Oh yeah, it's going to be really fun. We're going to just increase our skills that we've already had, and we're going to get better and better and better. So here we go. Let's go look at, quickly, I want to do a review. So I want us to look at where we came from in relation to, the last week and where we're going from there. Can you guys see? For some reason, I don't see the little Zoom box. Can you guys see my code pen right now? It says I am responsive. Yes? Okay. Man, it's so weird. Usually I can see a little border in it. I know that I'm on it, but whatever. Okay. So let's just talk about really quickly, like this is going to be really quick, but basically what last week was like. So last week we learned that we have content, and inside that content we have meaning, and we use a special word for that meaning. What was that special word to describe content's meaning to like another developer or a crawler? Semantic. That's right. Now, semantic does not just apply to HTML, but they literally call it semantic HTML when they're saying that. So the word semantic is not unique to HTML. In this case, we're not very semantic right now. How could we make this more semantic? If we were to make this more semantic, what would we have to do? It's just upgrading the div tag to something else. What would be our semantic tag here? Section. Okay, sweet. So we come in here, we say section, and notice that nothing changes unless we pop some style on there, right? So semantic. Now, why did styles change? That's because browsers have default user agents, right? And so then we learned about resets. So we go to our CSS, come in here, hit a reset, save and close, and now we have total control over our code, our CSS. Now, sometimes total control is a little annoying, though, because you have to rewrite styles that the user agent already had for you. But the sum total of that result is you have control. So you can do everything you want. So I could say font size, 35 px, and it's going to listen to me. Also, cross-browser, it should be more consistent. Okay, so that was like day one. And day two was introducing inline block, inline end block, and inline block. So for example, if I were to put a span, which is an inline element that allows me to basically style something, it's not semantic. Span tags are not semantic because they're just used for styling. And I could say, new update or something. And then I can come in here and I could say new update, right? And you can see we have the orange versus the red, kind of hard to see, so let's just make it blue. One thing that I don't think I tackled well enough, and that is global styles versus more localized styles. So a global style is a style that would have an impact across multiple pages of websites. And the way you can tell a global style instantly is the depth of its specificity or not. So in this case, the depth of this is shallow, like it's very, very light in its depth. So that means this would be considered a global style because anything across multiple web pages on your app or website is going to be impacted if you had another class called new-update. This is considered very bad practice in the professional world to have global styles just all over your style sheet. Because if you don't have, like this right here is not a global style, right? It has to be in responsive and it has to be in H1. So globally, I guess technically if you had a responsive tag and an H1, that would impact it, but we're getting further away. Just even one step in is better than this because we're global. So if we wanted to make this better and not be global, we could wrap it into what it was in, right? So responsive. And then we have new update. If we were only going to be updating this one line of code to blue and not using it over and over and over in our style guide, like in our website, this is the way to go. if we had, some instruction from a designer and they were like, okay, every this is going to always be this across every website. Well, then of course it's a global style. Global style should go at the top of the page. More specific style should go to the bottom, right? So more specific bottom. This has an impact on us today. That's why I'm hitting it pretty hard. Global are at the top. This is the same principle, though, that we learned with the CSS reset. Because if you put your reset at the bottom, it's going to jack up your website so bad. But if you put it at the top, it's going to set everything to 0, and then everything will cascade nicely. So really, this is just a cascade, but I'm giving you more detail. Yeah, so this CodePen, sorry, this one, it's in your collection. Let me get you guys this CodePen. This is going to be where we're going to live today in our guided demo. Okay, so at this point, hopefully you're getting some light bulbs going off again. You're feeling like, oh yeah, I remember this stuff from last time. I'm giving you a little bit more depth because it's going to help us when we start talking about responsive. All right, and then we got into Flexbox, right? And we learned that Flexbox is really unique because it's not just a property, it's a module. And so we learned that when you enable a module, a CSS module, you gain a whole set of properties and rules that come with it. And some of those rules are like the depth at which this thing has impact. So if I were to say display flex on responsive, I picked a bad word, but I can't spell responsive. So if I said display flex here, would I have impact on this span right here? Would new dash update have flex properties available to it? It's nested inside of it, but what do you think? No, that's right. Because it only goes one level deep. And the one level deep is the H1, right? So the span is actually, if we were looking at this on a top-down level, the span is actually too deep. So good catch, everyone. So in this case, if I say display flex, I'd have to have multiple items to really see any impact, right? So I'd have to come in here and say like another. And then we can see that another is actually up here. If we take off display flex, you'll see that it's a block level element, so it's trying to go across the whole page. All right, so that's display flex. Of course, display flex has container properties and it has item properties. All of these things are going to impact you today. All these things that we're talking about are a summation of getting us to responsive. So that's why I'm reviewing everything really quick. So display flex, one level deep. Justify content, for example, is something that we could do. So we could say justify content. We could say center, and it would center it in the middle of in this case, the section. Okay, and then of course we could do align items. So if we said align items center, so it's centered. Why is that not changing, everybody? Did I write some bad code, or is there something I'm missing? Why does it feel like that didn't work? Even though it did. What am I missing here? Okay, so I'm getting some good answers. 1J says flex direction is row. I mean, not quite. Brian says the height is the size of the div. That's exactly right. So if we put a border on this, border 1px solid red, you can see that it's only as tall as the content, right? So I would have to manipulate the height to get the desired behavior that I'm looking for. So if I said like 400px, aha, there it is, right? So instead of center, I could say, well, I could do whatever I want. And baseline, start. But you can see here that this is why it didn't look like it was working. Line is on what axis? A line equals what axis? Cross axis, that's right. And main axis is justify. Okay, so that represents Monday through Wednesday, basically. And then, of course, Thursday was get. And just so you know, we introduced branching, right? And we learned how to do get, checkout, and set things to head. And now you'll notice that your assignments, I'm not going to have you branch anymore until you get to basically work with somebody else. Branching is a tool used across teams with multiple developers. And so I want to put a little asterisk here and say, look, we did branching just to experience it and understand it, but it's really not useful to you until you start working with other teams. Others could make arguments that it's still useful to yourself, and I'm going, it is, but as far as for what we're doing here at Lambda School, up until Lambda Labs, really, you won't be using branching very much, if at all, unless you're working with other people in your cohort. So I just wanted to put a little note here that from here on out, we're going to be doing fork, clone, and then you're going to be working on your project, okay, and then pull request back. So the branching thing was super fun and powerful, but as far as like your everyday life here, it's going to be even easier than that. It's going to be forking, cloning, working, adding, committing, and then pushing back up and then pull requesting. So I just wanted you to understand like some context there to say you are far and away the most advanced Git user group that we've had, cohort. And I'm excited for you to hit the ground running when you get to Lambda Labs with your newfound branching skills. But for now, understand that I won't be having you do that branch merge craziness anymore. It was artificial just to get your brains going. Okay, so that is last week. Moving into this week, let's start talking about what the heck responsive web design even means. And I think one of the first things is let's go find out some new terms and some things that maybe you're not understanding. I gave you this link. It got way more ad heavy since I've given it, so maybe we're part of that problem. But I really like the visualization of this website for the concepts of responsive web design. So responsive web design is basically the internet is changing. It's changing like right before our eyes. Mobile devices are starting to surpass and have surpassed in some markets desktop usage. So basically, more people are getting on mobile devices. And I mean, this is old news. This is several years old. But as far as like catching up though, because it's hard, it's expensive to own a mobile device. And the average person is not going to have the income to afford an iPad or something, or even a tablet or anything, or even a Kindle Fire. So these kind of things eventually catch up. And so this concept is old. Like we've been doing responsive web design for years and years, but the devices are starting to catch up. So the average person is starting to be able to consume electronic devices easier because prices have gone down. So we are the results of economy, of course. And now as web developers, we have to be even more aware because there are literally thousands of devices that we have to program for. Now, that can be overwhelming though. So really you got to find your market and the company you work for. But in general, I want you to understand why we're learning this. Like it's really important. And these are even some older stats. And I'm not going to read them with you, but understand the market has completely changed and is going to even get more drastic towards different devices and not just desktops, of course. All right, so let's talk about one of the first responsive web design concepts, and that is a fixed website layout. Okay, so a fixed website layout is basically that. It does not move. It's very rigid. So if we were to go back to, let's see here, my Zoom thing over here. If we were to go back to, for example, our code right here, and if we didn't have display flex on here, you would just see a bunch of left and right scroll bars like all over the place. And this is like, I would consider this the 1990s and early 2000s of the internet. So basically, as we have a width, so let me just go This stuff was just for fun, but we don't need it anymore. So this was just a good learning experience, but it's not really going to help you. What's going to help you is what I'm going to write from here on out, though. Okay, so in here, we'll say div, we'll put a container in here, and we'll have an remember an H1, let's put a section in here, because divs are just for markup, so we'll do section. Whoa, okay, and then we'll do an H1, and we'll do, let's say we're making a website, and we're like a digital agency or something. So we'll say like digital agency. And so here's my digital agency. And inside my digital agency, I have some paragraph about, the work we do is digital, of course. So if we come in here, and I've got the beginnings. Now remember, my reset's still enabled, so it's kind of like small. But I'm going to come in here, I'm going to say container. And then what if I put a width on here? Well, a lot of people would put like, 1200 px width on here. And then let's put a border on this so we can see what just happened. Well, you can see that we have a horizontal scroll bar down here, right? I have to scroll all the way over to see that view. This view is fixed. So this is a fixed website. Basically, you'll still see these websites out there because A, people don't want to, it's basically money. They don't want to pay for a service like Wix or Squarespace or something. Or B, the developer doesn't know how to do responsive web design. And so in this case, this is the beginnings of where we've been though. Like Monday through Wednesday, we were doing fixed websites. Like all of the stuff we did had scroll bars in it, like the Great Idea web page. Let's go look at that really quickly. So I'm going to go back to last week. Look at the solution. Let's see, where are we? Where am I? Where am I? Well, I guess I can go over to the solutions I provided to you. I don't know why I'm trying to think outside the box here. And I can go to, let's see here. UI solutions. So this is all the solutions from last week. And by the way, if you don't have these, it's nice to have them all in one spot. So here you go. If you want them, there you go. So these are the model solutions. Of course, you're going to have your own things that you're working on. But if we were to go look at the inline block solution, for example, or on day 2 here, you can see we've got this scroll bar, right? So this is fixed. It doesn't adjust to the web page it's in. This is a bad experience because it's even worse on a phone, right? Because on a phone, if you had this, the experience is going to be 10 times worse on the scrolling. You get thumb burn on your thumb. It's going to be awful. And so this concept is called fixed website layout, okay? And we lived in this concept for many, many, many years until we started getting a little bit smarter. So we got a little bit smarter, and we got to a fluid website design. And a fluid website design is the complete opposite of the fixed website. So the fixed is everything's fixed, scroll bars for days. A fluid website is nothing is fixed, has no bones in it. It's just totally elastic. One thing that we could see that's kind of like this is like Bootstrap's website. So if we were to scroll all the way out, notice that this bar goes on for forever. No matter how much I scroll out, this thing is going to expand. And also the content down here is fluid. So if I were to take this down, you can see it's doing that. Now, it does have aspects of a fully responsive web page though, so I want you to focus on the navigation up here. But notice how it goes on for forever if I zoom out, right? So fluid always fills the full measure of its screen. It's 100% percent-based layout, okay? Tom says, so fluid would be okay for nav bars and footers? Yeah, a lot of times you'll see nav bars and footers in combination with other concepts that we're about to get to create a fully responsive web page. That's a good observation, Tom, and that's right. You'll see a lot of that concept before. Real quick, I've seen a couple of you say, we're not learning Bootstrap. Guess what? I've already created like 4 videos of this for past cohorts. If you're really excited about Bootstrap, just go watch my videos. I'll give you the links if you want them. But Bootstrap I have found to be more of a hindrance to new learners than a help, because they start focusing on Bootstrap and they lose all their fundamental skills because it becomes such a crutch. So I've seen this happen basically 3 cohorts in a row where Bootstrap became a problem more than a help. Yep. Brian says crutch strap. And honestly, you can do anything with Bootstrap in small doses. So I can give you guys a little brown bag if you want, like later this week, or I could just show you the videos that we did, a quick review of Bootstrap. It's my favorite UI framework. It's super awesome. But again, I've learned that students, it's not a great thing compared to just good old-fashioned CSS, and pre-processing. So side note there. I've seen some of you talk about it, but I've got tons of data that suggests it's not a good idea. Of course, if you're really fascinated by it, you can totally go learn it, but I'm not going to be teaching it full-time here anymore. Okay, so we were just looking at our web page here, and we can see it here with the scroll bars, and now we're back to our fluid. So we understand fluid is percent-based. Okay, so the next thing is going to be adaptive. So adaptive is breakpoints. So we're going to skip over this for a second and come back. So adaptive hits a breakpoint, a media query breakpoint, and we're going to be talking about those in great detail today. But basically, the web page will adjust based on where it is. So I have an example solution of today. And so today's code is going to be like, it's going to be this project. But you're going to see as I hit a breakpoint, the whole design changes. So you see that between our desktop version here, and then we hit a breakpoint here. Notice that the CSS takes a quick change and completely morphs. If we go down to our mobile version, there we go. Now you can see that the breakpoint hit, and we've got new CSS. So this is called adaptive. Basically, it adapts to the breakpoint or the viewport based on the resolution of the page. We're going to be talking about this today. You're going to be building this today. That's going to be your project this afternoon to get to what I just showed you. And this really is just awesome, really powerful tool here to learn how to be adaptive. And then tomorrow, we're going to learn how to be fully responsive. So fully responsive takes the concepts of fluid and adaptive and merges them together. So you have percent-based layouts with breakpoints to create a really beautiful fluid design that you can't really see any scroll bars in. So for example, right here on this solution, you will see that there are places that there are scroll bars present, right? And so we're going to learn about removing all of those hindrances with Flexbox, percent-based layouts, responsive units, all that stuff tomorrow. But today we're going to be focusing on just getting those breakpoints and understanding what the heck they are. Let's see. 1J says, so are they all separate CSS pages for each device? In this case, no. It's just media queries. So we'll talk about that very shortly here. Marshall says, so fluid deals with pages getting bigger and adaptive deals with pages getting smaller. No, I think that you could totally infer that from the examples I gave you though. So fluid is, they don't have breakpoints. Like there's just not breakpoints. If you do a 100% fluid website, you will not see the screen change different styles. It'll just keep getting smaller or bigger. It's very rare to see like a 100% fluid website anymore. They used to be super popular. But not anymore. But the concept still exists where you basically don't have breakpoints. A fully responsive web page, again, is the combination of all of the above. Percents, breakpoints, and responsive units. Yep. So Tom makes a comment, a mix of the two would make sense, and you're totally right. So we're going to focus on the first part of the mix today, and then we're going to get the full mix tomorrow, because I want you conceptually to understand and own media queries really well. Okay, so now you guys get a general idea of when I say fixed versus fluid versus adaptive versus responsive. Okay, the goal is to be fully responsive at all times, but you will find it is very time consuming. It's not hard. Okay, what I'm going to show you today is not actually hard at all to do. Like, it's not hard to code the thing I'm going to show you. It just takes time to get it to look just right and to function well across multiple devices. So the beautiful part of responsive design is it's not really that much more as far as learning new things. It's just more in the way of following the design. So that's why it's called responsive web design and not like responsive web design development, right? Like, you've kind of learned all the principles already. Now we're just going to use them in a new way. Okay, so one of the first concepts of responsive web design is actually in the HTML. So in order for our responsive web design techniques to even work, we have to use a thing called viewport. So the viewport meta tag let's see, I had it in the training kit. It takes us here. So the viewport meta tag is interesting because if we don't have a meta tag in place, our devices naturally go to the widths that we tell them to. So for example, in this case where it says width 1200 px, it's going to try to create a view that has 1200 pixels based on the screen resolution of your device. And we have crazy devices these days, like crazy devices. So let me show you what I mean by this. I'm going to share my screen to I have an Xcode iOS simulator on my computer. And let me get Zoom shared to that so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. So as you can see here, this is an iOS device simulator, and it's the closest to the real device you can get. Like, outside of actually plugging in my device, this has the same operating system running on it. It's pretty cool. But you'll notice that the same website we were just looking at, the Great Idea webpage, notice how awful it is on a phone. I mean, that's awful. This is scrolling vertically and horizontally. This is a really poor experience, right? And that is because the viewport is not enabled here. And we're going to talk about what's going to happen when I view. But I wanted to show you a non-example first, so you can get an idea of when I say the code is trying to fill the measure of pixels based on the screen resolution. This is what I mean, right? So this was one of the first problems from early responsive web design developers had to accomplish was, hey, wait a second, we have all these devices now. We have iPhones, we have Android devices, we have Kindle Fires, we have tablets, Samsung, like literally millions of people using different thousands of devices. And so we found that the internet that we were building was not the internet that was working for everything else, all the devices, because we were living in a desktop world. So coming back to our code, enter the viewport tag. So the viewport tag was introduced to allow developers to know how wide a device was. So we can put this, it's a meta tag. So meta tags go inside of our head element. All right, now the header is not the same thing as the head. So if I were to view page source here, you can see here's the head tag, right? You can also see that they have a viewport tag right in their own page so that you could view this website on a mobile device and it would scale properly to the phone. Don't worry, I'm going to give you some examples so it'll make more sense in a second. I just want to talk about the basic principle here first. So in this case, this meta tag that we're going to pop in here has a name, viewport, has a content value, and it says width, assign the value of device-width. Now, you've probably never seen or will see another attribute that looks this strange. And notice there's a comma, and then there's another one. So this is a very unique HTML tag that you don't really need to memorize. You just need to know it exists and copy and paste it from other places. Like, I'm not telling you need to memorize this stuff. I'm saying you just need to know what it does. And then I'll show you how you can get one every day of the week if you need it. But in this case, with device width. So this is telling the device, hey, I don't want you to pretend like you're a desktop anymore. I want you to act like your actual screen width. Does that make sense? So this is telling you, hey, don't be a 1200 wide pixel web page anymore. Be a 1200 wide depending on the screen that you're in. And then the initial scale right here, this is the zoom of the phone. So remember how you have to pinch and zoom on a website? Well, you can set the initial zoom to 1.0, which is basically don't zoom. And so that's what the combination of these things do. So this content tag says be as wide as the device, and this scale says don't worry about the zoom, just come in the default zoom. So now let's go see what this looks like. Let's scroll down a little bit here, and you can see without the viewport meta tag, a web page tries to be like we just saw with the Innovation on Demand, its own giant screen. With the viewport meta tag, it recognizes how large the width is of the device and tries to fill the content accordingly. So this is a really good non-example example combination here. So you see there's a pretty huge difference between these two. Now, the problem is with our desktops is we can't really emulate this experience really well because our desktops are still operating systems with apps, and they're not the same size as a phone. So to see the viewport tag in action, you really do have to use a phone to see it. And I'll show it to you shortly here with the iPhone simulator. So let me go over to my VS Code first so I can show you the code I changed. So I'm going to come over to VS Code. Okay, so you see here I've got this viewport commented out. And you remember how I had to scroll over the page, right? So I'm going to uncomment it now. It's the same viewport you just saw. So with device width, initial scale 1 up. So nothing new here. I'm going to save it. And now I'm going to go back to my iPhone simulator. So you've seen that I saved it. I'm going to share my screen so you can see this before I refresh it. So before I refresh the page, see how it's not filling, it's the double scroll, horizontal and vertical scrolling. So I'm going to refresh my page. And you can now see that my styles have kicked in. So now I've got my fully responsive web design. Now, of course, this looks really pretty because I put all my media queries in. But the concept of the viewport is hopefully what you're seeing a huge difference between the two right there. So I'm going to go back to my code without swapping the view. I'm going to comment it out. Now, I've commented out the code again. So here's it working. Viewport gone. Now you can see that it's back to its old crappy self again, right? Okay, one more time. Viewport back in. I'm saving it on a different screen you can't see. Just refreshing. There you go. Any questions on the viewport? Okay, Patrick says, what is it you are using to do that with the phone? I'm using Xcode iPhone Simulator. And I'm swapping the viewport meta tag back and forth. So that's what I'm doing. Louison says, can you show us what it looks like with the viewport tag but no media queries? Sure. So what I'll do is I will remove my media queries and my CSS. I will not show that to you because that would be the solution. So I'll just do it behind the scenes here real quick. Having to dance around the solution a little bit. Okay, and then this one. Okay. So media queries have been removed. Let me refresh. And let me skip the viewport tag. Okay. So with the viewport tag gone, the problem with my code, so it is gone, the media queries have been removed. The problem with this is that I hard coded my pixels out to be specifically not percent based. So this is actually an interesting thing to look at because without the media queries working, it's still using my code the way I told it to. And I did a fixed width on purpose to show you the difference, and you'll see why in a second. But it looks like the viewport tag doesn't even exist. So the viewport tag really is so important in combination with our media queries. Or if I did everything percent based, meaning we're going to talk about responsive units tomorrow. If I did everything with like rems and percent based, it would still fit the screen. So I'm glad you brought that up because it doesn't change anything until you pop those media queries in with that viewport tag. Let's see. Brock says, can you change your viewport size using developer tools? You can. And so we'll leave the simulator for now. I just wanted to show that one example, non-example. But let me see. Let me get the stuff in here. Switch screen. Sorry, I'm juggling 3 Zoom screens for a second. And turning off my simulator because it destroys my computer. Okay. All right, back to normal. Okay, so the question was asked, hey, can't we just use the simulator in the browser? So if you inspect Element on your Chrome tools, you'll notice that they have this handy dandy device toggle toolbar. And so in this toolbar, you can see, let me get my thing there. You can see an iPhone 5 SE, like it even has an operating system that it tries to manipulate. And then you can see the page itself, right? So you can see the viewport tag is definitely working, but the media queries are mostly working here. So the viewport tag is specifically for devices. So that's the problem is this thing still knows it's an operating, it still knows it's Mac OS using Chrome. So it's still not native. And you will not, like if you try to develop on this, Brock, without being on an actual device, you're going to have totally different experience than you thought when the site's done. But if you know that and you're coding with the viewport in mind, you can code inside of here and it should look, I mean, it's 90%. It's really close. There's that 10% though that you just can't get without a simulator. But I'm not suggesting to you guys that you need to get Macs just for the simulator or anything. I'm just saying it's a nice tool. Android also has a simulator tool as well. But this device toggle thing is really cool because it has the breakpoints up here. So you can actually toggle these breakpoints just by clicking a button. But again, we're about to talk about these things. But before we do, let's take a 5-minute break. We just had our break time here. When you come back, I'm going to answer your questions that I see in chat, and we'll talk about min and max width and get into media queries. But before that, let's do a 5-minute break. All right, come on back. Answer some of your questions that I saw in channel. And let's see, I will answer, I should say. Really good questions coming in. Joseph says, hey, moving forward, why would the viewport meta tag not be included in every project? Would there be a rationale for leaving it out? The answer is it should be from now on in every project ever that you build. That sounds pretty drastic, but until that technology or that tag changes, it is literally like fundamentally should be in every project if you're going to be doing anything on a mobile device, which almost every web page I ever work on now does. So yeah, good question. The answer is yes, it should be in everyone ever. Tom says, is it okay to let Emmett put it in there for me? Yeah, that's fine too. So one thing I was going to show you guys is if you go to settings, HTML, you will see, oops, that's not it. Where am I? Settings, HTML. There's an insert the most common viewport meta tag button. Kind of a funny, I mean, it's probably the craziest button I've ever seen. But that button gives you the default viewport. Here, I'll give it to you guys as well here. So in channel, that viewport tag is the most common that you'll see. There's many places. Ultimately, you can just Google it, right? I mean, you can Google anything. But in this case, the one I provided to you and the one that CodePen uses and this one, they're all the same. So that doesn't mean that they're all the same all the time. Some people have unique asks. Some people want to auto zoom in, but it really depends on your actual device. Let's see. Linda asked what happened to the circle image using the viewport, and that is going to be the result of display none on a breakpoint. So we'll talk about that for the rest of the time. So for the next hour, we're going to be dissecting breakpoints down and figuring them out and actually building responsive code. It's going to be so fun. But I needed you guys to understand the concepts of fixed, fluid, responsive, and adaptive. Like, we got to understand those concepts. We've got to understand what the viewport tag is doing for us. It's really, really important. And then now we're going to talk about min and max width properties and how they impact media queries. Okay, so just everybody catch up with me here. Now I want you guys to follow along at this point. We've done a lot of talking. I think it's time to get some fingers on keyboards here. So go ahead and pull up the code that I've given you. And let's make some changes here so we can see stuff. So in this case, we've got a width of 1200 px. That's just not going to fly, right? It's just too large for our screen, especially while we're trying to learn. So first off, let's come back here and change this to like 600 so we can see the whole square inside of our view, just like that. See how it's got some space. Now remember, we can use some code like margin 0 auto, and that's going to automatically center the left and right margins so that if I get bigger, it stays in the center with the width. If I get smaller, it stays in the center, right? So we're going to talk more about how we can change this in the future. But right now, I want to talk about a maximum width and a minimum width, okay? So in this case, we have our container. It's just got this content in here. We could add some padding on it if we wanted, right? Just to give ourselves some breathing room. So padding, go ahead and type this with me, 20px. Now, recall how the container just got bigger. And so we have to, I don't want that behavior. I want it to stay the same. So I'm going to put my universal selector on. Box sizing, border box. And now it just puts the padding inside my width, so it's super nice. And then, of course, my digital agency H1 and the work we do. Let's make this just a little bit more viable. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to put a class on my section tag. Class, assign the value of, we'll just say agency. So we have a better hook. If I'm going too fast, don't worry, I'll save it. And then we'll come back in here, and I want container. I do want this to be a global style. And I'm going to start building off of my agency tag. So I'm going to say agency. And then in this case, we'll have an H1. We'll say font size 24px. We'll make it bigger just so we can all see it. And then we'll just do some like margin bottom on this to give us some breathing room. So, and we'll do like 20px. When I say breathing room, again, I'm talking about white space. So now this feels like it's breathing. It's easier for our minds to consume this faster. So digital agency, the work we do is digital, of course. So we've got this little web page in the making. All right, so I'm gonna hit save. If you're following along and you didn't fork it, you got all my updates. If you forked it, of course, keep up if you can. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna introduce this concept of max and minimum width. So conceptually, here's what it looks like. Max dash width. And then if we put a number in here, it's going to tell the browsers, renderer, don't go past this on this element. So I'm going to say 400. Oops. Notice how everything just went and just shrunk down. Even though I declared a width of 600, because I declared a maximum width of 400, this one actually supersedes the width property. So be careful with your max width properties, because they will actually stop any other container. Now, if we put width below it, watch what happens. Nothing. That's because the property max dash width in and of itself is going to overwrite width no matter what we do. Okay? So be careful with this. But it's kind of interesting to note that max width is not allowing this container to go beyond the number we said. This is actually really important because we don't want our content to go off on for forever. We've learned through studying and our own behavior that humans can't consume more than 600-ish pixels wide of content. We become uninterested, scientifically proven. So knowing that, if we go look at some of the bigger content websites out there like ESPN.com, look at that. Look how wide this is. It's roughly 600 pixels wide. Let's go to CNN or something, some other giant news website. Look how they've chunked their content. They know that humans can't consume large left to right amounts of content. Let's go to LA Times. Whoops, didn't spell that right. There we go. Look at that. Do you see the pattern? It's like, it's unseeable. Like once you've seen the pattern, you start to go, oh my gosh, I'm being manipulated. It's the same kind of thing in the rule of thirds when you start learning about filmmaking and stuff like that, and just film in general. You start to see, oh my gosh, nothing's ever centered. You start to go, whoa, everything's like right here. Starts off over here, and they're not ever centered. So the same kind of thing exists in web pages. You'll now notice that every bit of content that you try to consume is not bigger than 600 pixels. And that's because of that data. And so they want you to be able to consume this and not be overwhelmed. Now, I mean, case in point though, let's make our own version of this. I'm gonna do like 1,000 pixels. Get rid of this max width for a second. I know, I'm sorry. Once you see it though, it's really interesting. So we'll get some bacon ifsum again, just to make it easier for us. Heck, even this website is doing it. So if we come over here and we pop in some ipsum just so we can see more content, you notice how awful that is on your brain. Just reading that is just awful. It's like torturous because you can't keep up with that much text. Your brain has to do so much visualization and organization of that code. And this, of course, we know it's code, but this content, it's unreadable. So a lot of companies, in fact, all of the major brands and companies out there understand that you want to keep your content in a much smaller, more consumable way. So there you go. Pretty fun stuff that I think goes beyond programming, but also helps you understand why we have these things. So, okay, why would you ever have a width and a max width? Well, you shouldn't, unless it's percent-based. We're going to be talking about that tomorrow. But for now, let's just focus on max dash width. You now understand that we cannot go past this width, right, with this property. And it has multiple reasons why and why it even exists. Conversely, there is a minimum width. So if I say min width, notice that my max width, let's take this guy down to 600 again, so it's not so crazy. Now watch this. As I scroll down, well, you'll notice that I've got this scroll bar at 600, but it won't actually get smaller than 400. So it'll never ever get smaller than 400 no matter what I do. Let's change this to even be a percent, which we'll do tomorrow. So I've got this 100% based, right? So notice that without min width in place, I can go down as far as I can possibly go in the browser. Look at that. So it just keeps going down, right? But if I pop a min width in here, and we come down, notice that we hit a scroll bar. Okay? So this 400 is kicking in at that point and saying, nope, I'm not going to get any smaller than this. Why would you ever use that? You're not going to be using this as much in everyday programming. In fact, I can't remember the last time I min width something. But in media queries, both of these values are extremely important and used every day. So there's a distinction. The reason I'm building up this way is because, again, I want you to see how they function. So max width is so basically in your head, think like this. Max width, if I were to put a comment in here, would be don't go past this, right? Min width is don't get smaller than this. So how about we say bigger and smaller? Don't go bigger than this. Does that make sense? So if we do 600, so in 100% website, we say 600px, don't get bigger than this. And then of course, as soon as we hit 600, see how it's getting smaller and smaller, and then it hits the 400 and says don't get smaller than that. Are we feeling confident with this concept right now? I'm going to say confident with min and max width. And just give me a yes or no on the emoticon here. Patrick says, with responsive design, is there a unit we should strive to use, if not pixels? We'll talk about that tomorrow. But mostly it's going to be percent-based, percent. And we're not going to use M's, and I'll tell you why. That's just me, though. We'll talk about rems tomorrow. Tom says, so will we be using the min and max widths as properties like getters for media queries? Yes, we will. M's used to be extreme. Well, they still are extremely popular if you're talking to a programmer that has not changed since the early 2000s. But rems have really, with browser technology, they've really changed. Okay, so it seems like we're feeling confident with min and max width. So now let's take our new knowledge of min and max width and upgrade it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these concepts here and we're going to pop them into media queries. All right, so what is a media query? Well, simply put, it's a breakpoint on a page where new style is introduced. So let's come in here and say at media. So this is a weird CSS syntax. You've not seen anything this weird yet. Because like CSS has just been like curly braces. You know, the weirdest thing I think we've seen is like a pseudo selector, right? Like hover. So if we did like agency, H1, hover, like I think that's the weirdest thing we've seen. But outside of that, this is getting really weird. So this @ symbol is telling the browser, hey, I'm different, okay? So @media tells us what kind of media we're going to be in. If you don't put anything, it'll just default to screen. So let's go look at this really quick. @media, whoops. So if we come in here, you can see the @media rule is used in media queries to apply different styles for different media types devices. So they can check many things, such as height, width, orientation, resolution. It's pretty cool. They're supported in everything down to the 9s, so IE9, Opera 9. You'll notice that we have different media. If you don't type anything, it automatically assumes all. Print is specifically for printers. So yes, you know, people still, I printed a web page the other day because I needed to get a coupon, right? Or coupon. So in this case, if you hit print, this is going to listen to a media query if there's a print assigned to it. Screen is just for the screen. So if you don't want people to worry about having things that are being printed, you got to have a print version and a screen version. Usually when you do a print version, you're just going to grab everything and take off all the styles so it doesn't print crazy styles. And there's speech, so used for screen readers that reads the page out loud. If you're interested in speech, that's a stretch goal for today, but go check it out. So in this case, we're using the default all because then it covers all three of these. So those that print the page, those that are on the page, and those that are using a screen reader. So this is what we're going to be using. But if you want to specifically call it out, you can see right here that we can actually add in the screen keyword. So if we go to our code, if we wanted to say screen only, we could say screen like that. But again, I want us to get in the habit of using all for now. So we're just going to we don't have to type all, it just assumes it. All right, and then notice I've got these parentheses. This looks kind of like JavaScript. And it is like JavaScript in that we're going to be passing in a parameter here. So this is the first time we've been doing parameters inside of CSS. And inside this parameter, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to look at desktop design first, and then we're going to go mobile first in a little bit. So desktop design uses max-width. Okay. And then you can specify a value. So we could say like 600 px. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, screen, @media screen. Sorry, I was zoomed out. I'm going to zoom out a little bit there. So @media, max width, 600 px. And I'm going to open and close some curly braces because now we're getting into our CSS syntax. But what's crazy for the first time, if you've not done this at all, is we're going to be nesting our tags inside of our media query. So I'm going to take this like agency H1. I'm actually going to paste it directly inside of here. So this is a new weird thing because what we've done is we've taken our media query, we've written our max width, we've got our values here, and then now inside of here we're going to reference another selector. So let's see, there's our H1, that's our hover, what am I doing? So we have our agency class that's referenced here. Our H1. Now I don't know why the coloring broke. I wonder, did I do something? This looks good to me. Maybe I don't need a semicolon. Yeah, the semicolon's killing it. So no semicolon in there. So keep it like that. So what's going to happen now is at 600 pixels, this style will kick in. Okay, so this is interesting. This is called desktop. Desktop first. I'll explain that in great detail, but let's just go see what the heck happens. So let's see a big change. We'll just change the color, right? So we'll say go green at 600 pixels and below. So you can see we're already below 600, so it went green, right? So let me go above 600 and it's black. Let me go below 600 and it goes green. That's a little hard to see. Let's go blue for a second here. See the difference there? So before I hit my max width breakpoint, all of this code that I wrote up here, all this stuff, is in play. It's being used. The second that I hit a breakpoint at 600 pixels, I know you can't see it, but there's a little number down here that pops as soon as I scroll. Some of you might be able to see it. So as soon as I 600, so right here is 601, right there. So that's 601. So as soon as I go one more pixel over, this goes blue. Isn't that crazy? So cool. Let's make it a little bit easier to see though. Let's go to the container. So container, and we'll just change the background to orange so we can see the thing change. So we're on our desktop. Then as soon as we hit 600px, boom, everything goes orange. And guys, this applies to every CSS style. So if we were to display flex, if we were to display none, so for example, I could say, above 600, look normal. But as soon as you get to that breakpoint, I don't want to see the H1 anymore. So I can scroll down and H1 gone. Isn't that crazy? So we have total control over our CSS using these media queries. So notice the pattern. We've got at media. We're using all as the default, but we could say just screen if we wanted, if we didn't want this to be printed out or whatever. But in this case, we're using all. Max width 600px, and then inside of these braces, we have to rewrite the tags again. So we have to rewrite these style selectors. So notice if I minimize all my styles, you'll see I had to rewrite container twice, right? Like container once is, this is our desktop here, and then container here, this would represent whatever device we're trying to code for. So most iPads and tablets are going to be in a range from like 800px to even 400px. So in order to account for that range, it's usually a good idea to go to 800. And this could be considered a tablet view. Then what can we do? Well, we can actually introduce another. We can say, okay, in addition to our tablet view, let's add and layer on, because of the cascade, a mobile view. So I can come in here, put a little comment for my next developer, and then I could put in like 500px. So then I could change the background yet again to green. So now let's review. I've got my desktop version. I'm going to hit 800px and below. That goes orange, and I killed my H1. And then I'm going to go all the way down to 500px. Oh, wait, I think I have that min width on there. So it'll never get below there. No, 500 should be good. Let me get rid of these guys for a second, though. Let's see. Did I goof something on my syntax? Oh, yeah, I did. I always do this, and you'll see why in a couple days. It's such a bad habit, but it's because of pre-processing. Then we'll go green. Okay, so green, orange, nothing, and then our H1 tag. So our tablet here, you'll see, we're using max width at 800. And then our mobile, we're using 500. So we're layering on multiple media queries to get the behavior now. Isn't that crazy, you guys? I think that's pretty crazy. So I've got a little exercise for you that I want you to do. Let's see, it's under responsive web design. or UI responsive. All right. So what I want you to do is just have some creativity, and I want you to manipulate these three boxes. So I've got box 1, box 2, and box 3, as you can see, right? But I want you to go play around with some media queries and just go get some practice with this. So go manipulate boxes 1, 2, and 3 and show me what it would look like on like a tablet or phone. Try this out. So add channel, CodePen. All right. So what I want you to do is just go and manipulate these boxes, and I'll give you, what do you guys want, 5 or 7 minutes? What are you thinking? Do you want more time on this or less time? You got the concept, but it'd be nice to play around with it for 5 minutes. 7, 5, 5, 6, 6, 5, 7. All right, let's do 7. I'm seeing a lot of 7s. So be creative. Take the time. We'll take a break after we do the demo of this. So basically, I want you to don't break during this. This is like fingers on keyboard, very important time. Go for the next 7 minutes. I'll get a timer up and just start manipulating these three boxes. Try to get a tablet and a mobile view in 7 minutes for all three boxes. And then I'll open up a thread and I'll see what you guys, I have all your projects in here. Sorry, I'm getting distracted because it seems like some of you guys are losing Zoom or you can't hear me. Hopefully you guys something's not going on. Looks like it was just Michelle. Good thing is these are recorded. So you should, in the recording, you should be able to hear my voice clearly and Zoom won't break. Okay, so 7 minutes, go play around with these three boxes. And then when we come back, I want to see what you guys came up with. 7-minute timer is running, ready, go. There is no rhyme or reason to it, just have fun with it. I just want to see what can you do to those three boxes in 7 minutes with media queries. Okay, your time is up. I'm gonna open up a thread here. So I'm gonna call it Media Query Challenge Thread. I want you guys to post some of your code pens in here. I'm gonna pull them up and take a gander. Okay. Awesome. I see some stuff coming in. All right, so here we go. Let's see. Patrick Thompson. So you've got your boxes here. Let's see what he did here. There we go. Change the boxes out. Nicely done. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to see. Great job, Brian. Got some opacity. Oh, throwing some animations in. Ain't no thing. Looks really good. Nice job, Brian. Matthew. Got that first box in here. Nice. Very good. Perfect. Michael. See what you got here. Swap out the box. Oh, looks like that was forked from Lambda School, so I'll need your original there. That's okay. Marshall. Nice. Perfect. Changing those boxes out. Perfect. Okay. Nice job, everybody. Thanks for those that replied. I don't have enough time to go through all of them. At this juncture, we've hit our next break time. So let's break here. When we come back, we will be talking about the last parts of our media queries and how to be pixel perfect and still be using media queries. So I think this is like my secret sauce to success in my developments. You don't want to miss the next half hour. So let's take a 5-minute break here. When we come back, secret sauce. All right, come on back to your computers. We're going to finish strong here with more media query goodness and my secret sauce, which I will reveal into you shortly. So again, thank you for showcasing your talents. Let's jump over to, or jump back to our demo. So at this point, I feel like I'd be remiss if I was like, you can change colors and that's media queries, right? It's not true. Like there's everything. You can change any CSS property. So let's make this a tad bit more realistic and more aligned with what you're going to be doing with your assignment today. So in this case, it was fun to change the colors of things, but probably not very realistic. So I'm going to kill those. I'm going to kill the H1 stuff. And let's make this way more realistic and way more close to what you're going to be doing in your project today. So I'll keep this stuff up here. I'll save this so you can follow along with me if you'd like. Here's the link to where I am currently. That slash was not meant to go in there. There we go. So what's more realistic is like if we had a navigation system, right? And some of the things to work with. So let's go ahead and introduce a navigation. If you want to follow along and you feel like you can, go for it. If not, just watch. So we'll do header, type in a nav, a tag, and then in this case, we'll just do our pound symbol because we're not going anywhere. Home, the ye old navigation. So we'll say about, blog, contact. Okay, so we've got ourselves a navigation up here. Now, because we're inside of this header item, we can give it a class. Well, this is actually going to be global, but we'll just say class main nav. And now I've got my main nav in here. Now, again, conceptually, we are doing desktop first. I do want to address mobile first versus desktop first at this juncture. So desktop first means that all the main designs that are uninhibited or unmanipulated by media queries, these are all going to be your desktop design styles, okay? That's what desktop first means. If you're doing mobile first, that means that your base styles here, these are what you're planning to be using for your mobile design first, okay? Now, the way this does change, it does change drastically in one way, and that is media queries. So if we were doing mobile first, we would swap our max widths to min widths. All right, so that's why we learned all about that min and max difference. Also, we would swap the order in which they are brought in. So we would do our tiny values first, and then our bigger values second. And that is because, and this would actually be tablet, and then this would be desktop. Okay, so in minimum and in mobile, everything is literally flipped on its head. And the reason being is our base styles then become this, right? So here's our phone. And then as we add styles to this, as we get bigger, at a minimum width of 500 and above, we want something to change. So let's do the silly background thing again, just real quick. I shouldn't have deleted it. So container, background, orange. So notice that it's not kicking in, right? Before it did because we were using a max width, right? So if we said max, we're going to see that orange. But min width says don't do it until you get to 500 px and above. So now if I scroll up and I hit my tablet version, then I go orange. And then of course the same concept applies as I go to desktop. So then I could change this to green. And as I get bigger and I hit 800, then it goes green forever, right? Till it can't be green anymore. So your default styles on a mobile design first are going to be your base styles. and then you're going to evolve into tablet, and then evolve even further into desktop. So you'll notice something interesting. If you're doing mobile first, all of your styles, again, are not wrapped in a media query, but notice also that we're going from smaller numbers to bigger numbers incrementally, right? On desktop first, we're going from bigger numbers to smaller numbers incrementally because max width flips it on its head. So why would you ever want to learn desktop first, knowing that everything's mobile? The answer is usually designers. So here's what happens in the real world. This is very real. Your big boss comes in. We need this marketing page pronto. Designer comes in. Okay, boss, when do you need it by? I need it by tomorrow. I can't do it. It's a single page website. Okay, you can do it tomorrow. All right, just give me the desktop version. This is exactly what happens. So designer comes in, they build this big, beautiful desktop version of the website. And they go, here you go, big boss. Big boss goes, oh, that's beautiful. Awesome. Let's get this thing to the development team. Okay, designer comes down. Hey, developers, here's your desktop design. I don't know when the mobile's coming. It may not come, depending on what big boss says. And there you go. Now you've got desktop design. Like that happens more often than not, at least in agency work and in smaller businesses. In larger businesses, you sometimes, if you're lucky, have the luxury of a full designer team that's dedicated to mobile first. But I have very rarely been in that scenario. So usually if you're given a mobile design first, then you can logistically actually build it mobile first because you have the design for it. But just having a desktop design and trying to guess what the designer wants you to do on mobile always ends up in a nightmare. And so usually you're doing max width. And then eventually, like 2 weeks down the line, they find the marketing page is working really well, and they'll give you the mobile design finally. And so then you just use max widths to make it all work. Now, it's a bit cynical, I know, but that's reality. Like your designers usually don't have time to give you this beautiful mobile layout first. And in fact, I think there was only like one job I ever did that was like that. So it always makes me sad because I want to use these mobile first techniques. But real world is quite different as far as speed goes. Now, could you still account for that? Yes, you could build all your styles here, but then it would be so silly, right? You'd have this huge amount of styles in this one media query. The whole point of media queries is to get less styles the further you go down. So the idea is that tablet would cover it, because remember the cascade, right? So your tablet's going to usually have more styles than your phone, unless there's a drastic swap. All right, so yes, that's the real world, okay? That doesn't mean that's the only world. That just means that in general, most people are going to give you a desktop design first. I would reckon that unless you're working in an actual mobile company that only does mobile, that's where you're going to live. But the cool thing is you're prepared either way. You just got to swap your media queries depending on what you're doing. Question is asked, why do you prefer Wish you had more opportunities for mobile first? Is it more intuitive to code? Because inevitably, the product catches up with the design team, and it's mobile first for the rest of the time. But for the initial go, for the initial build, it's desktop. But it all depends on where you work. I want you to be prepared for both. So today, we're going to be doing desktop design first, even though I'm giving you a mobile. You know, spoiler alert, there is a stretch goal to do mobile first. If you want to do mobile first from the beginning, I have no problem with it. I just want to make sure you understand what you're doing, because desktop first is way easier to comprehend. Being able to understand that, oh, these numbers go in a certain order. So I start at 800, and then 800 and down, it does this. And then 500 and down, it does this. Just conceptually, it makes a lot more sense to go from white to the color, right? So that's why we do desktop first. Now that I've messed with your brains, though, you're probably going, well, I want to do mobile first. That sounds fun. And I would say, Cool. Hopefully you understand what I just said though. And so I'll let you figure that out on your own. But I'm gonna be teaching desktop first for now. Then tomorrow we can look at doing some more mobile first stuff. But really, that's it. That's the only thing is you swap your media queries and you swap your mentality as to what's getting done. So be my guest if you want to do that. All right, so now we've got that figured out. Let's look at doing something more realistic with our navigation. So again, remember we have our main nav. Let me save this and refresh the page you're on. You should be all caught up with me. Clint says, do media queries ever get in the way of specificity? Clint and everybody else that has that question, they are part of specificity. Okay, they're part of it. Media queries are lower on the page. So that means, remember in the cascade, whatever is lowest on the page overwrites what is ever above the page, like higher on the page. So that means that these media queries by default are the most specific on the page. So yes, you need to understand fully, media queries are part of that ecosystem. They are in the cascade of the cascading style sheets. But they don't have any more specificity than something else except to say, at this media's device, do this, right? But classes, IDs, all that stuff still matter. It's just media queries cascade at the bottom of the page, but they don't have to be at the bottom of the page, by the way. They could be at the top of the page, like right here. And they still have to follow. So like if I did container right here, this is actually a pretty common pattern. It's usually like this. So you'll see the normal CSS style, and then you'll see the media query just for one selector. You'll see this pattern a lot. And in fact, most people employ this pattern. So they'll do something like that, and then they'll go down to like agency H1, come in here, and then you'll see the same selector like this. So this is very common. If you want to do it, you can do it. That's fine if you want to do it this way today. But I would recommend for what we're doing right now to just put them all in two big media queries and rewrite your selector trees. Okay, so there's 800 and then there's, we did 500, right? So that'll be mobile and tablet. Now I've given you a link in your learning, in your training kit that talks about the 100% correct way to do CSS breakpoints. And I love this article. It's a little deeper than I would want to go here. That's why it's in the dig deeper section. But if you find this stuff fascinating or want to go further, I highly recommend you read this article. It really makes you think about what you're doing. All right, so in this case, we've got our container and we're about to get to our main navigation. So main navigation technically would be under container because it's still global, but could be on multiple pages, right? Because the navigation. So I'm going to say main nav and nav. Now you might be going, well, why didn't you just put the class on nav? Well, it's because this header is going to be wrapping over this all the time, and so that's why. This header is important for the search engine optimization and the semanticness of it. So I'm going to say main nav, and in this case, I'm going to display flex, right? And then we can do justify content, and we could do like space around or something. So now we've got our navigation, and we could say like margin 20px or something to give it some space. So now we've got kind of our navigation system, right? Well, let's say we wanted to change the way that navigation system looked on tablet. Well, the cool thing is, as long as we're using the same selector, so in this case, main nav, nav, let me bump down to tablet. So again, I'm down here, I'm in my max width 800, I'm desktop first, right? I don't have to rename the properties. I can just use the cascade. So delete, I could delete everything if I wanted to, but let's keep this mess around. So let's say on tablet, I wanted the margin to be even greater. Let's say I wanted it to be 40px. Now notice that I'm on tablet already, so it's kind of losing some of the fun there. But there's my desktop, right? And then of course, as I hit tablet, my margin gets bigger. Also, let's say I wanted to do something different with my flex direction. So I could say flex direction column, right? And so then I could use flex direction column here on tablet, whereas on desktop, I had it right there. Do you see how that works? Like, it's everything. Media queries can adjust everything. So this is going to be more realistic to what you're doing. Then of course, you'd have to make sure that the margin is on the actual items itself. So the A tags, right? So we'd have to come over here and say, okay, well, only on tablet, margin on the main nav with the nav and the A tag, then I want to have that margin pop in, right? And so of course that's a little too much, but see how that works? So I just totally transformed my navigation into media query. And of course I could go in here and I could change justify content center, right? Well, actually not true, align items, because it's on the cross axis. There we go. So you can see the huge difference between those navigation items, right? This is the kind of stuff I want you to do today in your project. So in your project today, I've told you to use your code. And by the way, if you downloaded this project before class today, I put up a new repo. This is a new repo with different instructions. So please, please go follow this link. This is today's link. If you used one in the past, or if you were trying to prep or something over the weekend, that's fine. You can still use your code if you did it. But I would say go grab this URL and follow these instructions. So in this case, first off, you got to set up your project with Git. So you'll notice that we're going to fork, clone, and then you're just ready to go. No branching today, okay? Task 2, review each design file. Notice the subtle differences. So I've given you the desktop. You guys already have this. You're done with this, right? So this is done. But now I've given you a tablet view. Notice what happened here. The navigation's totally different, right? The logo used to be up here. Now the navigation's full screen and the logo's up here. So think about how you could do that with CSS. Also notice the giant circle's gone, right? So what property does that? What CSS property gets rid of things? Like out of the view. Display none, right? So you can display none there. And then notice some of the margin and padding is just a slightly bit different here. All right, so then we'll go to design files and we'll do mobile view. And look at this, mobile looks way different, right? Has the similar navigation to what we just did together. Has a column layout, full screen. And notice that the flex boxes now that I was using before are no longer side to side. So then think to yourself, what do I need to do to get things to not be side to side anymore? Display flex is, what is it? It's flex. Think about that. No, not direction. That could work though. CSS is fickle that way. But you could just take off your flex wrapping, right? So flex wrap, no wrap. That's right. Good job. So, but think about those things being used in combination with media queries, and all of a sudden you have ultimate powers. Like you can do pretty much anything you see on the internet. It's pretty cool. So in this case, I want you to review each design file. You need to insert a viewport meta tag into the head of the project. It's not provided to you, so you need to do it. And I said, look, it's got to have these content values, so just the basic one. I want you to introduce max width media queries into your project at 800 and 500. Okay, because we're doing desktop first. Do your best to make your styles match the design files at each breakpoint. So here's the secret sauce. Are you ready for this? It's very quick. But this is going to help you be a way better developer than your peers. And I'm speaking from a lot of experience here. So if you come to our Great Idea webpage, there's some tools that I provided to you inside of the training kit. And inside the training kit, those tools are Chrome extensions. So right here, Chrome extension window resizer, Chrome extension perfect pixel. All right, so these Chrome extensions in combination with each other can help you get perfect pixel, perfect close enough designs. Because at this point, you're probably going, how the heck do I match up my designs at these breakpoints, right? Well, here's how you do it. One of the first plugins is called Window Resizer, and it allows you to resize your window to a certain width. So what's the first breakpoint, guys? It's 800, right? So if I change my window, I can change the viewport or window to 800 pixels wide. There we go. So now it'll kick in to 800 px wide, so you don't have to think about trying to resize that browser to the perfect width. So that's the first tool. It's called Window Resizer. Any tool, there's lots of tools that can do this, by the way. I just had to pick two that I used every day in my professional career, and I want you guys to know about them. So you could use Firefox Chrome Dev Tools. You could use Chrome, or not Firefox Chrome tools, but Dev Tools. You can use any tool you want that resizes to make sure it gets to a certain size. Heck, you could even just use the built-in Chrome tools for that. That's fine. But what I'm about to show you is the true secret sauce. So in this case, notice how I have the, this is my solution, right? So you can see that I've got the tablet version. And if I go above 800, it kicks out. So that's why I use the window resizer, right? So there's 800, there's above 800. Use my window resizer to go to 800. And now you can see I've basically got my tablet view. Well, now here's the really cool stuff. It's called Perfect Pixel. So Perfect Pixel allows you to overlay content on top of your HTML. It's like a stencil for your HTML. So what you can do is you can take those design files that I've provided to you, and you can use them and overlay them on top of your code. So I'm going to go find the Git repo that you're going to be using today, which is called Responsive Web Design -1. In the design files, there's a tablet view PNG. I'm going to upload it here. Notice that if I upload the file here, you can actually see that I've stenciled over the top of this, and you can see, you know, I'm pretty dang close, right? So this is the actual design file, and then behind it, up here, is the code. So this, my friends, really sets you apart from the crowd, because most people don't know this. They don't use this kind of technique of using a design file on top of their code. So let's say in this case, I'm off, right? Like, and the way you can tell is if you can actually go into the system here with this Pixel Perfect little drop overlay thing, and you can X out to 0, 0. So X and Y are set to 0. And then you can lock it so it doesn't move like while you're trying to type, because otherwise that'd be madness. But then you can hide it and you can toggle it off and on and see where you're off, right? So you can see I'm pretty dang close on everything except this innovation on demand's not quite where it should be. So what I can do is I can hide this, use my Chrome Dev Tools, so inspect element here, and now watch this. In combination with Pixel Perfect and my Dev Tools, I can manipulate my code live, right? So inspect element, I'm on this element, I can mess around with this thing now, and I could start bumping it around if I wanted to. So I could say like margin bottom, can't see it because the button's moving. See the button down there? So I can start bumping things around. And I'm just using my arrow keys, right? So if you hit shift up an arrow, it does 10 pixels either way. So shift down, shift up, it'll move those pixels, which is super helpful. And then you can take that value, copy it into your code, and then take your stencil and go, okay, my button needs to be right There, right there. And so you can start lining them up and making your code literally pixel perfect to design. This, my friends, is how I made a lot of money in my life, because my peers would take the design files from the designers and they would just build them with, Flexbox or inline or whatever floats, and then give it back to the designer. And the designer spent 20 hours sometimes on a page. And they'd look at it and go, this is crap. Like, you didn't do my design at all. Like, this is awful. And the big boss comes over and says, close enough, but next time do better, developer A. And they send it off to the client, right? Well, the designer's like, why the heck do I even spend 20 hours on this project? Like, if the developer's just going to poo-poo all over it. So then, I come in, I've got this pixel perfect mentality. I've got some tools to help me get this thing done and faster than other developers, because I'm basically stenciling. Like, I don't even have to think about layout anymore. And then the designers are in love with me because they're like, Josh does everything pixel perfect. Oh my gosh, the 20 hours I spent on that font, he did exactly what I asked him to do. And I'm getting it done faster than the other people because, again, I'm not worried about guessing. I don't have to guess anymore because it's literally a stencil on top of my page. And the cool thing is, as we're going to talk about tomorrow, percent-based layouts and responsive units in combination with this, you can actually build this pixel perfect with, fluid layout. I'll show you more about that tomorrow. So when I say try to be pixel perfect, don't be pixel perfect, because you'll end up spending 3 hours on one line of CSS and you'll go crazy. Don't be that person. I want you to be pixel close enough. So in this case, I'm totally pixel close enough, meaning, I can see some ghosting, but in general, all my stuff is where it should be. This would be considered really good work, okay? And notice that I'm not pixel perfect to the nth degree. I know I have OCD problems with being perfect on my code. Don't be that way. Inevitably, someone loses 3 hours trying to get one thing just right, and it's just awful. Don't do that. But do overlay it on top of your website and see if you have some huge, huge errors. Again, this applies to mobile as well. So if I go to mobile, I bust out my Pixel Perfect tool. I go find my mobile design on my Git repo, pull it up, and you can see I'm pretty dang close on this one. I mean, really good, right? Toggle it off and on. I did really good on this one. So there you go. You can do that for all 3 views. Tablet, desktop if you want. So if your desktop wasn't looking so great last week, this is an opportunity to make it look better. Then your tablet view, and then your phone view. Okay, that is what I have laid before you this afternoon. So go mess around with media queries, follow the instructions in the README file, use this guided demo as a help to you to figure out how you could start using those media queries. And now, my friends, you are equipped. There you go. That's my secret sauce. Not Thousand Island dressing. Perfect pixel and window resizer. Okay. Any questions before I let you off to lunch? Anything that I can make a little bit clearer? You should have expectations set for afternoon. Remember, don't try to be pixel perfect, even though it feels like, I would say go get it done first, like get all 3 views done and working. And then if you've got 3 hours or 2 hours ahead of you, go make it perfect pixel, but don't do that first. That's just not wise. Even the most experienced developer gets their butt kicked by that. Okay. I see some people typing. For those of you that are feeling comfortable, you're free to go. Head off to lunch. For anybody else that wants to ask questions, go ahead and stay here with me. And this is recorded, so I'll make sure and get it off. Nate will get it off to you. Yeah, you're welcome. Responsive web design is, as I said, it's super fun. Really good comment here. Jai says, I am not sure if this is relevant in today's lecture, but I noticed when you enter a URL in the browser on a mobile device, the URL usually goes www to just M. What is the advantages of changing the href link based on the query? Is it just for generating separate HTML files or certain media types? The answer is usually depending on the search engine's ranking system. So for quite a while, and I think currently, Google does provide a higher rank for those um, shops and products that actually have a designated mobile website. So when you see the M dot in the URL, that is a subdomain telling the search engine, hey, this is 100% built for mobile devices. So that's the difference between the www and the M. It's a subdomain specifically for mobile styling and mostly for search engine optimization. A lot of people use that. Like a lot of people will sniff your URL, like they'll sniff it out, and then they realize you're on a mobile device and they'll redirect you to the M dot. And that's on a server level, by the way. That's not CSS. The switching of URLs. It's usually Nginx or something. If you're not noticing a theme, Brian is definitely noticing it, which is you must appeal to the Google gods. It's true. But I've also found that Google is usually trying to give the user the best experience possible. Like fastest web page, right? So they're going to give you a higher rank. Better semantic HTML, they're going to give you a higher rank. So Google's trying to push developers to be better. That's my opinion. Okay. Have a good afternoon, you guys. Have fun with your code, and I'll see you tomorrow. We're going to talk about responsive units and make this even more responsive. See ya.